Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Doffney, and I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library. And it is my pleasure to present our speaker for today, Amanda Zehrer from the Credit Union of New Jersey. Amanda is a certified financial counselor, and she discusses ways to gain control of a crisis with expert prioritization and effective negotiations with creditors. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you for agreeing to speak to us today in honor of Money Smart Week, which is a nationwide celebration of financial literacy and improving financial literacy and trying to help people overcome their financial obstacles. So again, thank you to you and then the Credit Union of New Jersey for your continued partnership.
Thank you.
Before we jump into the presentation, just a few housekeeping items to go over. First and foremost, if you do have any questions, you can ask them using the Q&A function or the chat feature in the Zoom dashboard, and we'll be taking your questions at the end of the program, but please feel free to submit them at any time. Amanda has graciously provided us with a handout, so I will be sharing that in the chat once we get underway, and you will be able just to click on it and download it. There will be a survey available after the webinar, so if you have time, we ask that you please complete it. We always love hearing your feedback. And if you're looking for more information on help with your financial situation, the Credit Union of New Jersey has a wealth of financial tools and educational opportunities at the web address on the screen, and I will certainly put that in the chat as well, so you can have access to that. And then one last thing before we get into the presentation, I just want to go over the Zoom dashboard to make sure that you know where everything is. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a PC or a Mac. If you're using a mobile device, the dashboard is going to look a little bit different, but all of the features will still be there. In the bottom left-hand corner, you have your audio settings. You can check to make sure that if you're using a headset or other listening device, that the correct settings are applied. There is a raise hand button here in the middle. You can click on that and that will alert me, and I will send you a message in Zoom and hopefully be able to resolve any problems that you're having. And as I mentioned before about the Q&A session, there's a Q&A button or a chat button here. Please feel free to submit your questions in either of those ways, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end of the program. So that is everything that I have for you. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. From the beginning. And I just want to thank everybody for joining today. Again, my name is Amanda. I'm from the Credit Union of New Jersey. Like he said before, I am a certified financial counselor. So if anybody needs any kind of financial first aid, if you need any kind of help with your credit scores or anything, please let me know. I can definitely help with that. That's what we are here for. Also, too, if you have any questions about, the credit union or anything like that, please let me know and I can definitely help as well. But we are going to get started on the financial first aid. And the goal of this workshop really is to help people facing a financial crisis that leaves them unable or worried about their ability to pay their bills, create a plan for getting back on track. We're going to discuss topics such as constructing a budget, making adjustments to improve cash flow, prioritizing bills, and communicating with creditors. So these are some of the things that we're going to go over today for you. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Okay, so let's begin financial first aid. Dealing with a financial hardship can be extremely stressful. It is tempting just to ignore your bills that you cannot pay and hope everything works out, but this is generally not a good idea. The consequences of ignoring bills can include, and a whole bunch of different things, but higher interest rates on credit cards, late fee charges, credit report damage, repossession of loan and collateral. You can loss of services and wage garnishment. And just remember, when you do have a repossession, if you have a bankruptcy, please remember that it can stay on your credit report for up to 7 to 10 years. So just remember that before, you're really thinking of not paying your bills. If you're having trouble paying your bills, just keep that in mind. So the best way to handle a financial crisis is to review and adjust your budget. Prioritize your financial obligations and communicate with your creditors. You may not be able to pay all of your bills in full right away, but by taking a proactive approach to your finances, you can minimize the consequences until you get back on your feet. So you want to make sure that, before something happens and you have that, like I said, that financial crisis, you have to call your creditors. You have to call them, let them know the financial issue that you're in. They probably want maybe a letter signed by you. I know that we do that here at the credit union. We'll have you send in a letter explaining what is going on in your life right now. It just kind of helps us get an overview of, was it COVID? Was it something else? Are you having medical issues? Did something just happen in your life that maybe there was a death or, something like that that you're paying for? And there are ways, but you have to commute, like I said, with your creditors about it. So assess your income. If your expenses exceed your income, you will not be able to gain control of your financial situation until you make changes. The first thing you have to do is record all of your sources of income, including realistic expectations of your income that you'll be receiving soon. So what this means is you need to write down on a piece of paper, and this is pretty much what you call budgeting. This is how you assess, how much you have coming in and how much you have going out at the end of the month. And that's what we refer to as, a budget. So the first thing you have to do is, like I said, assess your income. What is your current income source? Ways to increase your income. Think of ways, if you're not making enough money coming in every week, how you can increase that. Rent out space or a bedroom, get a part-time job or work overtime. Another big thing is to reduce your tax withholdings if you usually get a refund. So maybe instead of claiming 0, you claim at least 2, so you get more in your paycheck. That's always a way of bringing in more money. Just remember that too. And apply for benefits, unemployment insurance, food stamps, all that if you are eligible for it. Please do not be ashamed if those are the income sources that you need, because everybody once in their lifetime will have to actually go for that, unemployment insurance, food stamps. And right now things are very hard. So you should never be ashamed if you are eligible for that. Then the next thing you need to do is assess your assets. Liquidizing assets is one way to pay for immediate expenses, but be sure to consider the cost before doing this. For example, withdrawing money from a 401k can result in taxes and penalties of up to 45% of the amount withdrawn. You are also leaving yourself less money for the future. But if this is the only way to save your home or pay for your medical insurance, you may think it is worth it. It is a good idea to consult with a financial professional before doing anything. Another thing is selling your home. Selling is not necessarily the only way to use the assets you have. Some retirement plans and cash value life insurance policies let you borrow against their value. You do not have to pay penalties or taxes when you borrow against a retirement plan, as long as you do not default on the loan. If you own a home that has equity in it, you may be able to get money to pay the bills from a home equity line of credit or loan, and get a cash out refinance. However, keep in mind that if you cannot afford the payments, you could lose your home. So these are assessing your assets that you have that maybe you can use money towards. Look to see, like I said, in life insurance, your home, things that, maybe some way for you to, maybe take money out of. We offer home equity line of credits and home equity loans. If you don't understand them, please, let me know. I can definitely do a one-on-one and go over that with you. The next thing to do is assess your expenses. List what you are currently spending your money on, and this is something that you have to do. For many people, increasing income is not practical, but almost everyone can reduce their spending in some way. Honestly assess what is necessary and what can be reduced, eliminated, postponed, or substituted with something cheaper. You have to write all this down. This is what budgeting is all about. And you really need to think, do you need Starbucks coffee? Can you make coffee from home? Do you need to eat lunch out every single day? That's an expense. That's something that you have to start thinking about if you're really struggling with money. And this is what financial first aid is all about. You need that help. You need to figure out where are you going wrong and where you're spending that money on. So the first thing you have to do, like I said, is write down a budget. And if you need any help, I am here to help you, make an actual budget for the month. But make sure you're saving all of your receipts. If you're someone that uses a debit card, make sure you're holding all those debit card receipts in maybe an envelope for 1 month, just so you know exactly what you're spending and you're swiping your debit card on. Assess your debt. And when you're experiencing a bill paying crisis, it can be very depressing to think about how much or how many people you owe, but it's essential that you take an accurate inventory of your debt. Open up all of your bills, and if you need to, call your creditors to verify your account balances. And that's something that's very important because a lot of people that are behind, some people don't want to open the bills that they have because they're so afraid to actually face reality and see that, yes, I am in terrible debt. Open your bills, call your creditors. You need to find out. It's the first thing you need to do in a financial crisis is to figure out how badly in debt that you are. So that's one thing that we always say, tell everyone to do. You need to assess the debt. You need to stop that bleeding. And this is going to be a review your financial position. So what you're going to do to see how you are, if you are in the red or you're the green, you're going to take your total monthly net income, all of that money that comes in, even if you have child support or something like that, minus your total monthly expenses that you have coming out, minus your total monthly debt payments that you need to pay, like your mortgage, your car loans. That equals your monthly surplus or shortfall. What I want to see is you being in the green. If you are in the red, please do not worry. There is ways that we can try to get you back into the green, so you have a surplus, so you have, money that, extra money that you could put into a savings account. But this is the first way to start to figure out where you are in your financial position. So you need to first, it also is prioritize expenses. Making adjustments to your budget could take time and you may not have enough money to pay all of your bills immediately. Unfortunately, you might have to make an unpleasant decision. What bills will go unpaid or not paid in full? And these are the things that you have to think about if times are that tough. These are the things that you have to prioritize. The most essential ones that you're going to need to pay are your mortgage or rent, your basic utilities, your medical insurance. Bills for which penalties for non-payment can be severe are your child support and back taxes, and we're going to go over all them. So for any bill that you cannot pay in full or you feel you will not be able to pay in the future, you should contact the creditor or service provider immediately. Some may do nothing, but many creditors are willing to help consumers facing hardship. This slide shows some tips to keep in mind when communicating with creditors. You need to be specific and honest about the reason for your hardship. They're going to want to know what happened. Why are you in the position that you're in? Have a plan for the future. Let them know that you are making changes so that you can resume paying your bills once you're back on your feet. Tell them that you do have a plan, that maybe you're getting a new job, that you're going to get a raise. They need to know what you're going to do to make yourself, you're getting yourself into that better situation. Always remember customer service, remain calm and polite. When you are dealing with a financial crisis, being upset is understandable, but yelling at a customer service representative won't help the situation. And I know that even for being here at the credit union, I've been yelled at many times, and I try to calm the person down or the member down because, I feel you feel their pain. But when they're screaming at you, you're trying, it's very hard to explain and try to help them. So try to remain as calm and polite as possible. Please do not make promises you can't keep. It can be tempting to jump at any concessions the creditor is willing to provide, but remember, you may only get one chance at help. If you can only pay $10 a month, you need to say so. So if you're trying to do a debt consolidation program or something like that, and your creditor is telling you, oh, well, you can, we'll make your payments $350 a month, and you're thinking in your head, you really can't afford that, tell them, be honest. Because once they make this change and once they work with you, that's probably the last time they're ever going to do that. And I know that because I've been there before. So you need to speak up and let them know that you cannot afford a payment. And make sure you do, like I said, you have to say how much you can actually afford. Keep a record, and this is very important. After every phone conversation, record the time and date you called, who you spoke with, and any actions you said that would take, and any promises the creditor made. Make sure you record everything down. If they have a number attached to their name, like an officer number, or if you talk to a supervisor, make sure you get their name and phone number and time. Record everything. Because sometimes you'll call these creditors and you'll be like, well, I made a deal with this person. And they're like, no, you didn't. So just make sure you write everything down and be persistent. If you call on the phone and the customer service rep says he or she cannot do anything, you need to ask to speak to a supervisor. If that's not effective, you can always send a letter as well, but make sure that you're persistent. Make sure that you keep on telling these people that you need help. Communication is the key. Like I said, if you're struggling, make sure that you don't give up on yourself, because believe me, being in debt is a very, when you take these psychological classes and psychology classes, it's a very depressing thing to be in. It keeps you up at night. It's the anxiety, and we're just trying here to get you out of that space, out of that feeling. So make sure you're persistent, keep records, remain calm and polite if you possibly can, and try to have that plan for the future. So now we're going to be talking about discussing handling different types of bills. Whether you rent or own, making your housing payment should be your first priority. And I say this all the time. If you do not pay your mortgage, your house can be foreclosed on. If you do not pay your rent, you can be evicted. Still, sometimes people find themselves in a situation where they just cannot keep up with their payments. If you do find yourself in this situation, you should contact your lender or landlord immediately. If you're worried about long-term affordability of your mortgage and are not particularly attached to your house, selling it may make the most sense. But what happens if you're having difficulty attracting a buyer? If the lender agrees, you may be able to do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, where the house is given back to the lender, or a short sale where the house is sold for less than the amount owed on the mortgage. If you do not want to stay in the house, refinancing is one way to bring your mortgage current or get better terms. But it can be very difficult to get a new mortgage if you have a low credit score or little equity in the home. In general, the best thing you could do is to contact your lender and make them aware of your situation. They may allow you to send reduced payments for a specified period of time and pay the remainder later, or modify your loan to reduce the payment. If you are a renter, the landlord may be willing to accept reduced rent for a few months or allow you to make up missed payments over time. Leaving and renting a cheaper place is another option, but if you have a lease, you are responsible for the remaining month's rent. However, the landlord may voluntarily release you from your lease if you explain your hardship. You can always be let off the hook if the landlord finds a suitable replacement for the tenant. So just make sure communication is the key. If you have a mortgage and you're having issues, see if they can do a modification. Some of them are actually putting money to the end of the mortgage. Just make sure that you are not being penalized for modifications, that you're not paying, make sure that when you do talk about a modification for your mortgage, if you're having issues paying, that all of a sudden they're going to make you make up these 3 extra payments, and they're adding them on to your payment you already have, which means you went from making maybe a $1,500 payment. Now your payment's up to $2,100, and you just cannot make that payment. So you really need to talk to your mortgage company, see if they can do like a modification, see if there is a repayment plan where you can maybe pay back $100 at a time per month, and just make sure that you are communicating. Handling car loans. In many states, a car can be repossessed after only 1 missed payment. So if you cannot make your payments, it's a good idea to call your lender. Lenders are sometimes willing to extend loans to cover missed payments or set up repayment plans. Other possible options include refinancing or selling the car. Some people choose to give the car back to the lender instead of waiting for them to take it. This is called a voluntary repossession. Your lender may be willing to give you a concession or two if you save them the hassle of having to repossess the car themselves, but otherwise a voluntary repossession is no different from a regular repossession. And what that means, a voluntary, is sometimes when I come to the credit union, there's a car sitting in our parking lot. Somebody couldn't afford it. They left the car that they had a loan on here in our parking lot. That's a voluntary repossession. You just cannot afford to pay the payments. You just bring it back to the bank. I've seen it a lot. I've been in banking for 20 years. I've seen it done all the time. Just remember, no matter what kind of repossession it is, if either we take it or you just drop it off, it will stay on your record for 7 to 10 years. Another thing is delinquent utility payments can cause your services to be suspended or terminated. But some utilities are most important than others. If a service is not needed and cannot be paid, you may want to just cancel it. If a service is needed, call that utility company and ask about your payment arrangements. You may not have to pay the full amount owed right away. You can also see if they have any payment assistance programs for people facing economic hardship. I know with COVID, they were not allowed to shut certain things off. See if you can make sure you're calling your utility companies. If you're not able to afford and you are in a financial crisis, maybe the first thing you want to do is cancel your cable, but make sure you're paying your water bill and your electric bill because you need them. So these are the things that you have to look over if you're really struggling at this point right now. Handling insurance. It is best to work with your current insurer to prevent your policy from getting canceled, because if it is, you may find it difficult to get new coverage or have to pay a large amount to reinstate your policy. You may be able to lower your car insurance premiums by increasing your deductible. If your car is older, you may even want to switch to liability only coverage. So think about that for auto. Increase that deductible. So say that you have a $1,000 deductible, maybe go up to $2,500. That actually lowers your payment. It can be tempting to let a life insurance policy lapse, but consider what would happen to your family if you or your spouse did pass away. If you had a cash value policy, you may be able to use some of the cash value to pay your premiums or switch to a term policy, which is usually cheaper. Reducing coverage instead of canceling the policy completely may be another possibility. But you have to discuss this with your insurance agent, what options are available for you. And some people even have their health insurance paid for by their employers, but many people don't. And I see that a lot here. The premiums for a standard policy can be astronomical. If your income is below a certain limit or you are pregnant or disabled, you may be able to get coverage through Medicaid or a state health insurance program. Otherwise, if you cannot afford the premiums for a regular policy, you may want to look into what's called catastrophic medical insurance. This catastrophic medical insurance only covers major medical events like hospital stays, and thus the premiums tend to be more affordable. So just make sure that you call your state, local, go onto the state website. There is state health insurance out there. They do go by income. You just have to fill out a form if you're by yourself with your children. But make sure these are things that you're actually paying or trying to pay on time. These are just things that you really need to focus on, because once you stop paying your auto insurance, you're going to have to repay that, and they're going to hit you with a reinstatement fee. Health insurance, once you lose that, it's very hard to get again, because they're going to want to know why you dropped it in the first place. So paying your mortgage or rent is the most important than paying your credit card bill. But keep in mind that neglecting unsecured debt, which is, your credit cards, especially if it's done for a long period of time, can result in collection and legal actions, as well as credit report damage. Fortunately, there's often some flexibility with unsecured debt. Many creditors offer hardship programs or short-term repayment arrangements that allow you to make smaller payments. Often creditors will lower the interest rate as well. So this is just pretty much, explaining to you, when you have unsecured debt, make sure you're making sure that you're paying your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, and your insurance first. Don't worry about the unsecured debt right now if you're really struggling. This is the last thing you need to worry about. You still need to call them and communicate. But if you are really struggling financially, or you lost a job and you are like at your, wit's end, do not worry about your unsecured debt at this point. You can always build your credit back up. Pay the most important things. Handling student loans. Borrowers are experiencing financial difficulties with student loans that can often get a temporary suspension of payments through a forbearance or deferment. Additionally, some borrowers may qualify for lower payments through an alternate repayment plan, such as the income-sensitive repayment plan. If you are behind, you may be able to come current by consolidating your loans. Defaulted borrowers with public student loans also have a one-time right to get out of default with a reasonable and affordable repayment plan. And this is the future to help protect against crisis. So, if you have a student loan out there, definitely go onto the website, government website. There's tons of different programs right now for student loans. And this is a big one too, handling child support and alimony. Child support and alimony are not expenses that can easily be reduced. If there is a formal court order in place and you want to have that payment amount modified, you have to go back to court. It is likely that you will need the assistance of a lawyer or at the very least a legal typing service. Keep in mind that modifications are not retroactive. You are responsible for paying the full amount of all past due payments. So this is another bill that you want to make sure that you're paying because they're not going to sit here and try to wipe some of it away. You owe that money. You are always going to owe child support and alimony. And another one, the IRS, which is generally willing to work with taxpayers who want to get back on track. If you haven't filed in years past, do so right away. It is a crime to not file a tax return when you owe taxes. If you cannot pay the amount owed in full, you may be able to set up a monthly repayment plan or establish an offer and compromise, which is a settlement of the debt for the less of the full amount owed. I know the IRS is doing that a lot right now. They're doing compromises. Say you owed a $10,000 balance, but you're telling them that you're able to pay them back $6,000 within 5 years. They're doing that right now. They're trying to work with people because they know there's a lot of people in a tough situation right now. Your rights. So it is generally in your best interest to communicate with your creditors, but you do not need to put up with abuse. And this is something that everybody needs to understand. The Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act regulates collection agencies' conduct towards consumers. It prohibits bill collectors from calling you multiple times a day or at inconvenient times, contacting you at work if you tell them that your employer disapproves, letting a third party know they are trying to collect a debt from you, and using false threats, obscenities, racial slurs, or insults. Those are your rights. Additionally, if you send a written request to the collection agency to cease communication with you, they must do so, with the exception of being able to notify you once to let you know the action they plan to take with the debt. There is a cease and desist letter that is that's on a handout that will be given to you if you ask for it. However, before sending it out, keep in mind that if you cut off contact with a bill collector, they may feel that they have no choice but to sue you. But just make sure you know your rights. Make sure you know that they're not allowed to threaten you. They're not allowed to call you all the time. And if you have an issue with a creditor or a discrepancy, they have 30 days to get in contact with you to fix that. How many people are out there that are so worried about their financial difficulties will affect their credit score? So late payments and most other negative information can remain on your credit score for 7 years, but no one wants to have a bad credit score. And if you have the capacity to make your payments on time and in full, of course you should do so. However, if you do not have the capacity to pay all your bills and cannot work out arrangements with your creditors, please do not beat yourself up if your credit suffers. Keeping a roof over your head and food in your stomach is more important than having immaculate credit. Once you have gotten through your financial crisis, you will be in a better position to work on rebuilding your credit. Resume making your payments on time and keep your balances on revolving debt low. If all of your accounts were closed, look into opening a new account. With a low credit score, you may need a cosigner to get approved. There's also a secured credit card is another option. Secured credit cards require you to make a deposit, which the creditor gets to keep if you do not make payments, and are usually the easiest type of credit to get. I know for a fact from me, my background was I had to go through a divorce. They actually repossessed my car. I foreclosed on my home, and I had to start from scratch with me and my 2 children. And I had to stop and worry about them first. And that's what this financial, this whole entire seminar is about. You have to worry about you and your family first. Worry about yourself, and your credit will always, don't worry about your credit if you're suffering financially. Make sure that you have a roof over your head, make sure that your kids are eating, make sure that you are eating, and then we can always get your credit back up to where it's supposed to be. And how I did that, after everything I went through was I actually got a secured credit card. And what that is I had $500 that somebody actually, I had an extra, from my mother. She gave me $500. I put it into a savings account and I received a credit card for that amount. And what happens is the bank secures that money and you're still building credit off this credit card. But if you cannot pay a bank, the bank takes it from that savings account and pays it off. And that was the first way that I actually started building my credit from a 498. And it took me 2.5 years, but I'm actually up to a 724. So please, like I said, if you are in a financial issue, please do not worry about it because we can always build your credit. And that's what we're here for. And another thing, while we all hope to never encounter financial problems again, the unfortunate truth is that many families face hardships multiple times in the course of their lives. And one of the best ways to prepare for a financial crisis is to have this emergency savings. Most financial experts recommend that you set aside at least 3 to 6 months worth of essential living expenses. For me, when I'm letting you know, even if you have a month, that's better than most people right now. Let's just be honest, it's very hard to save 3 to 6 months worth of essential living expenses when you're having a financial crisis. But even if you have a month, even if you have a mortgage payment, just put that away into another bank somewhere that you can't touch, just in case of emergencies. That's better than most people are doing right now. Savings may be very difficult now, but once your financial situation stabilizes, start setting aside whatever you can. Consider having some of your paycheck directly deposited into your savings account or setting up a regular automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account. And pretty soon you'll find yourself with a tidy sum. And if another financial storm comes your way, you'll be covered. So like I said, we can also do that too, where we take money from your paycheck and put it right into your savings account. And you won't even actually see it from your paycheck. So that's just another way of savings. And also too, this is a financial education and counseling service that we also go through. It's called Balance. And this is the toll-free number. And you can also visit cunj.balancepro.org. They help with debt repayment options, credit report review, and more. But that is actually it for me for today. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, please ask away. I can also do a one-on-one with anybody just to go over their financial situation, to bring up their credit report. But if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Again, my name is Amanda, and thank you so much for joining today. And I hope you learned a little bit.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. Again, if
You're
anybody
welcome.
does have questions, you can submit them using the Q&A feature or the chat feature in the Zoom dashboard. And I'll kind of start off with a question. What are some strategies of getting over that initial fear to contact your creditors?
So that's the hardest part. I had to do that because I was ashamed of not being able to pay my mortgage. I think that was the biggest thing I had to, overcome. It's like an anxiety of you feeling like you feel like you don't want to admit to them that you're failing, but you have to just call, because you have to understand, per day, I get about 50 to 70 calls from the credit union of people that are struggling. So you just have to make sure that you realize you're not the only one. You just have to call and let them know, look, this is the position I'm in. I am not ashamed of it. I am not embarrassed. Everybody is. And they have to know what's going on. And hopefully they will work with you. Don't be ashamed too if some of them do get kind of nasty with you, because I had to go through that as well. And they make you feel embarrassed. Never feel embarrassed. You just have to call and make sure that you actually communicate, though. That is the biggest, most important thing.
Thank you. Any tips on prioritizing your expenses, and how do we identify our needs and wants?
The one thing that they always taught me is that if you really need something, you're able to wait 24 hours before you buy it. So if you have to go out and you just want something, I always say this: wait the 24-hour rule. Sleep on it. If you really need it in the morning, then you and it's something that you need to live, then yes, buy it. But if something that you want, like these brand new shoes, but you really don't need them, do not buy them. I've learned too that I had to go to psychology classes, is that actually spending money is a form, is a sickness. And some people actually have to take their credit cards and their debit cards and someone has to lock them up and they go through counseling because they have issues with spending. And some people don't know the difference between needs and wants. So the thing is, like I said, try keeping it, if it's a real big need and it's something that you need, you should be able to sleep on it within 24 hours. If you need it that morning after you wake up, and you really have to have it in your life and it's something that's going to better you and that stuff, then yes, you should buy it. But if it's something like new shoes, a new pocketbook, something like that, a new car, going out to eat when you have food at home, those are just wants because you just want it at that time. And these are things that you have to psychologically try to help yourself realize every day.
Do you have any tips for reducing spending using credit cards?
Don't bring them with you. That was the one thing I learned I had to do. You would have to literally learn to take your credit cards and put them somewhere before you leave the house. Don't bring them with you when you go out. Only bring cash. And a huge tip is if you are in huge credit card debt, make sure you're paying off the credit cards with the highest interest rates first. Some people have like a $500 credit card. Maybe you have like a $10,000 one. See which one has the highest interest rate and start chunking away of that has the highest one, because it takes 30 years to pay off your credit card. It will for anybody. So if you can start paying off the one, like with the highest interest rate first, don't worry about the low balance ones right now. But if you have an issue with spending on credit cards, my first thing to tell you is to literally hide them, put them somewhere else. I had to actually close my credit cards out and watch my credit score drop because I had such an issue with spending. If you're that bad, then you might have to go into, do that too as well. Cancel your credit cards, especially if you have, it's like an illness, you cannot stop. These are just ways, to really stop spending.
All right. Can you share any tips on starting the habit of saving? Is there an amount that's too small?
No. So that's the one thing I wanted to go over as well. When you're coming out of a financial crisis, I don't care if it's $5, if it's $10. I remember saving $3 from my paycheck. It was something as long as you're putting something, and it doesn't matter what the amount is, something away, you are starting to save. You'll work yourself up to a bigger amount when you can. But even if it's a $3 coffee that you spend every week at Wawa, just put that into a savings account. At least you're trying to do something. So any little bit does add up. Just think about that $3, even if it's a week, you'll have six, you'll have like $12, and that's something that you saved and you're proud of. And it makes you feel accomplished that you did that for even if it's a month. So even the smallest amount, it doesn't matter what it is, just try to save. Like I said, the easiest thing to do is instead of buying that one coffee a day, or, if you're going to Starbucks or if you're having that one lunch you're buying, try putting that money that you did during the week, even if it's just one day, for one day, put that money that you would have spent on that lunch into a savings account and try doing that once a week, every single week, and see how much you saved. That's just, and instead of, buying that lunch, you bring lunch in, just try doing that if you're having issues financially.
Alrighty, well, I don't see any more questions, so
Perfect.
I think we can go ahead and end it there. So thank you so much, Amanda, for speaking today and sharing some of these tips and tricks for
Thank you.
getting our finances under control. Thank you everyone for attending today and joining in our celebration of Money Smart Week. You can certainly Google Money Smart Week to see if there are other organizations that are providing programming this week, and it ranges on all things related to finances. So I'd just like to close out with everybody be safe, be well, and hopefully we can see you soon.
Thank you so much.